Hey everyone, welcome to the Mayor's Table. You're going to love today's episode. We have San Juan County Sheriff Shane Ferrari on to give us a full overview of things happening with our sheriff's office. Great stories, great information. Sit back, relax, get your cup of joe, and let's talk to the sheriff. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, welcome to the Mayor's Table. With me today is a special guest, San Juan County Sheriff Shane Ferrari. Shane, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure. It's been a little bit, but thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
We're kind of following this theme this month of law enforcement updates, so
awesome.
This is very timely, and you and I go way, way back to the old school days of Farmington High School.
Yeah,
and
we do.
Leadership San Juan class of 2012.
Yes, best class ever.
Best class ever, man. Really thankful for your leadership and
thank you, sir.
Everything you've been doing here in San Juan County. We were talking before we started the show, 27 years you've
27 years with the San Juan County Sheriff's Office.
With one agency even.
One agency, that's
Yeah.
right. I started out my career very early when I was exploring law enforcement as a reserve deputy. So I started out volunteering there. And over the years, had a great opportunity to work myself through the ranks and serve in every division. I've held every rank and worked every division, and never did I thought that I would find myself in the position today, but my boots are behind the big desk, and sometimes I sit back in my chair and I reflect back on my law enforcement career and think to myself, I never thought I would be here. This wasn't the plan. I just wanted to drive fast and chase bad guys. That's all I wanted to do in the beginning, yeah.
Well, I got to think in 27 years, I mean, you've seen some pretty interesting things here in the county, and I imagine that the way things have kind of progressed during that 27 years, man, it's different now. It is.
When I first started my law enforcement career was in 1997, and in 1998 I was picked up as a full-time deputy. And when I was coming in during that time, there was a police reform period in that time where community policing was a big buzzword. And I remember coming out of the academy and talking to the old cops, and they would be telling me, well, why do you even want to do this job? It's changed so much, it's not as fun as it used to be, and so on and so forth. And during my term as sheriff, we've seen police reform again after all these years. And, reform is not a bad word. It just means we're getting better. We want to stop, reassess, and how can we reapproach things? And I often find older deputies, I should say, telling the young guys, why do you want to do this job anymore? It's changed. It's always going to change.
Right.
We have to change to society. When I first started, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. Kids weren't running around with smartphones. We didn't have to deal with internet crimes. It didn't have, sex offenders preying on our children through a phone, while they were alone in their room, and parents didn't know about these things. So I've seen a lot of change during my time, and both good and bad. But we roll with the punches, and we're still here serving the public, and ultimately we still love the job, still love serving the community.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, and you talk about, you got into it young. Basically right out of high school.
Correct, yeah.
And what was that motivation for you then? Why did you want to be a law enforcement officer?
Well, my original goal graduating high school is I wanted to go into the military. I always had a passion for, like most cops, the infantry and that type of thing. Actually, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL before Navy SEALs were cool. I went into the
Whoa. Charlie Sheen had already made the Navy SEAL movie, all right.
I think he did right around 96, and that may have been some of the inspiration, but they weren't SEAL Team 6 yet, right? So I thought that'd be really cool. I used to spend my summers out at Navajo Dam. My parents had a houseboat, so I swam like crazy, and I thought that was the area or direction I was going to go. I went and talked to the Navy recruiter and learned about buds and all that. Then I have an uncle that's ex-Delta, and he would talk about his Tier 1 days, and so I was really hyped up about that. And I met a woman who later became my wife. So instead of signing up for the military, I signed up for life with her.
Yeah.
And so I had this struggle. I was working at Sears and K-Frog Radio at the same time. So I was working for old K-Frog Radio.
Man, I forgot about those days.
104.5 K-Frog Radio.
You and Danny Cluxton hanging out at Sears together.
And Danny Cluxton, yeah. And So I'm kind of in the struggle right now of what I thought I was going to do after high school. I was doing commission sales, which I soon realized I'd rather be shot at than do commission sales. God bless the people that are on commission sales. Never knew what your paycheck was going to be like. It was just stressful.
Yeah.
And I walked into Webb Chevrolet, and I was having an oil change done on my pickup, and there was a man by the name of John Snyder there that used to work in the sales department. And I still remember to this day, he had a blue tie on with a handcuff tie tack, and I was kind of giving him a hard time about it. And I said, "What's the deal with that, John?" And he says, "Well, I'm a reserve deputy with the San Juan County Sheriff's Office." I said, "What's that?" And he explained it to me. And during that time, I started to think about law enforcement and what was, something similar to the military, paramilitary being law enforcement. And I had been testing, and at that time, everybody wanted to be a cop. We tested during the consortium.
Everybody wanted to be a cop.
Every agency, they called it the consortium. So every agency just did one big testing. So you would show up in the room with like 300 people. 12 of them were lateral officers. Farmington was looking for 3 guys. The SO at that time, I think they may have had about 65 people, and they were probably looking for 1, and Aztec and Bloomfield were just exploring. And so it was very tough, very competitive at that time. And, I'd make it to the interview, and they'd say, "We don't have any life experience." When I was 21 years old, I didn't have any life experience. So I looked at the reserve deputy program as a way to get my foot in the door.
Sure.
So I went through the very first reserve deputy program under Sheriff Davidson, and graduated and became a reserve deputy. And from my very first ride-along, there wasn't anything else I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, Sheriff Davidson was able to get several more positions. So I got hired during this big hiring influx, and that started my career right there, and went to the academy in '98.
Sheriff Davidson, what a good guy.
He was a great guy.
Yeah.
He still is a good guy. I still talk to him.
Yeah.
One thing I did when
His son was my roommate at UNM.
Really? I did not know that.
For 3 years.
Really?
Brent. Yeah.
Oh, we don't.
He's a Forest Service guy now.
Yeah, that's what I understand. I do talk to Sheriff Davidson occasionally, and when I became sheriff, I actually called all the old sheriffs because these are guys that we have policies and procedures and things that we've done because of their time as sheriff, and I wanted to have that knowledge. So I reached out to Sheriff Davidson, McCloskey. I reached out to Doug Brown, Con Brown. I reached out to these guys and established relationships with them. Every once in a while I call them and I'm like, "We got this policy, and I know it's been a policy since I was here. What were you thinking? Because I'm needing to make a change, but I want to make sure I don't change it back to something that this is the reason you implemented it. Am I going in the right direction?" And some of that experience went back into the 1970s, and I really looked at them as kind of like a council of old sheriffs.
Sure.
And that was beneficial. Ken, I spoke to him,
yeah.
and of course I served under Ken and was his under sheriff. So it was always nice to have something to bounce some idea off of, or just get some advice, or sometimes just vent, and them say, "It's okay. We went through that too." So yeah.
What would you tell a young person today, or even it doesn't even have to be a young person, because we are desperately needing law enforcement officers, not just here locally, but all across this nation. Because as you said, when we were coming out of high school, everybody wanted to be a cop. That was just one of the things. I remember elementary school, who wants to be a police officer? All the boys are raising their hands. And I just did a talk with a group of high school kids, and I asked that question, and one kid in the class raised their hands. So unfortunately, leadership in this country has done a really good job of really downplaying the importance of police officers. I know what we have. We 6,000 to 7,000 calls for police in the city of Farmington every month. I'm not sure what your calls of service are, but for a county of 123,000 people, I bet it's
almost 60,000 calls a year.
Yeah.
Almost 60,000 calls a year. And you're right, it is more difficult. And you talk about my career and the things I've seen. We at the Sheriff's Office have about a 6% vacancy rate that we saw in our norms. And this was prior to COVID and prior to George Floyd. And I really pin that era right there, the George Floyd, the COVID era right in there. And from that time, with the COVID, obviously people weren't looking for jobs, but at the same time, we have people retiring, we have people leaving the occupation. The career expectancy of a law enforcement officer in the United States is only 6 years. It's probably a little less than that.
Wow.
So so just like every employer out there, we hurt in the vacancies of trying to find qualified people that had the ability to stay at home, still be have some little small income from the government because everything was shut down. So they didn't find that there was any necessity to go find a job. So as my vacancies are going down and I'm holding that 6%, it drops, and then we get smacked again. Horrible incident with George Floyd happens, and there's national outcry. I mean, we weren't the ones that were involved in George Floyd, but we felt it right here in New Mexico, our own state legislation. We need more police accountability. We need more oversight. And very aggressively started looking at laws that really put law enforcement in a bad light. These guys got to have cameras, and looked at what they did with civil rights reform. We can sue them for more, and really negative on law enforcement. Simultaneously, we have social media now, and you have politicians going up there saying we're going to hold police accountable, and then it was almost like they were choosing sides. Are we going to be on the side of the cops, the side of society, or the side of bad guys? Well, the bad guys, it emboldened them, right?
Sure.
We had more officer-involved shootings because they felt like we were the bad guys and they were warranted in their actions. We had young people, antagonizing law enforcement, trying to get them to react. And all these negative videos and just negative stories about law enforcement. Still today, the hottest stories that hit the press are some type of police misconduct. We've seen what's happening right now in Albuquerque with that big scam happening with their DWI unit. I even got hammered a little bit in the paper here just yesterday over a homicide that we're working and not releasing enough information, and accusing us of hiding things. So there's all this negative out there. So when you ask a young person who watches videos of cops being antagonized and bashing cops right and left, and you ask them, how would you like to be a San Juan County Sheriff's Deputy? They say, I don't think so. I see it at the county fair. I go out to the county fair, I'm at our booth, and young people come aside and say, what would you think of an exciting career? Are you a person that likes monotony? No. Are you the person that likes to work in the office? No. Are you the type of person that likes to come to work every day not knowing what to expect? Do you like to help people? You're the type of people that just like a variety in their job. This is a great job, great benefits, great pay, outstanding people to work with, and helping your community. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be the guy that prosecute the law enforcement officers for having to make a split-second decision, having my face on the front of the paper in the media. No, I'm not willing to do that. I'll go do something else.
Yeah,
I do think the pendulum is starting to sway a little bit back into our favor. I do. You talk about, they politicized law enforcement. You look at the fraction of law enforcement officers actually do wrong. And in my time, I have been involved in cases where we have sent officers to prison. I have. I was a Region 2 narcotics agent when we had dirty cops in there. I was the sheriff when we did the investigation on a state police agent and sent him to prison.
Right.
Horrible, horrible things. These guys give us a black eye. They do. But I think that pendulum is swinging back. As politicians demonized us there for a while, what ended up happening? Crime was out of control. We can't find law enforcement. Citizens are frustrated. Rises in crimes, call response. There's nobody there. Government never says they're sorry, but they love to throw money at the problem. So we started seeing hiring bonuses and increases in pay to try to attract people to law enforcement, but and retain the ones that were left over that didn't get out of the field.
How do you feel like that's working?
I don't think it's working well, to be honest with you. We're throwing money at a problem, but I haven't seen a massive increase. I was fortunate enough 3 years ago to be part of some funds that were set aside through the state of New Mexico. I got $3.2 million for recruiting and retention. And retention and recruiting have to go hand in hand.
Right.
You can't have a bucket with a hole in it trying to fill it. It's pointless. It's not, just there with a mop. It's not going to happen. So how do you plug the hole first? You got to take care of the people that you have. So we gave retention bonuses to those guys. I really think the retention bonuses helped, but the recruiting end of it, I didn't see a massive influx of people coming in just for the bonus. I didn't. That money comes and goes. So I didn't see that. I think it dangled a carrot, but nobody was really biting off that. It's a difficult thing. The city of Farmington just came out with a very generous bonus plan. They did.
Right.
And of course, when I saw it, I kind of raised my eyebrows at it. But and when I did mine, the city of Farmington raised their eyebrows. They're like, Shane, if you do this, all of our city cops are going to go here. And I let them know right off the bat that as the county sheriff, it doesn't do me any good poaching the city's guys. No. Because then when they're low, I come into the city to help them out.
Right.
If I'm low in the county, nobody comes out to help me. State police. But
sure.
A whole different aspect there. But what I always tell people when they see that and have a knee-jerk reaction, what happens was good for one is good for all. If I get a hiring, if I find that we're in a position where we can give a substantial raise to our guys, everybody else responds off that. Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, they raise their salary. Mm-hmm. So what's good for one is good for the other. So it'll all play out in the end. And
it happens a lot. It starts at the state level.
Absolutely.
We've seen, and we're anticipating, or maybe you could kind of share some light on that. We were anticipating that the state's going to provide state officers an additional raise this year.
Yes,
a substantial raise.
Yeah, most ridiculous bills I've ever seen in my life. We saw that first go through last year, where literally the bill said the state police shall be the highest paid agency in the land. Why? Because they're the state police, and we're state legislators and state government up here, and we want to make sure that we don't have vacancies. How are you going to fill those vacancies? And the quickest way to do that is through lateral officers, right?
That's it.
So it's pulling out of our local PDs and our sheriff's offices. The amount of money they were paying them, and looking at the separation between what the average salary is for law enforcement in the state of New Mexico and where they went ahead, you were talking substantial, almost $15 an hour difference for some of these agents down in southern New Mexico. And I even went to the DPS secretary. I said, you need to think about what you're doing here. You could vacate a community down there of their law enforcement. And, some of the discussion was, well, guys won't leave, because of camaraderie and seniority. I said, well, hold on. When you're talking about that much money, that's life-changing. That's the ability for a spouse to stay at home and go back to school. That's the ability of an officer or a deputy being able to buy that house finally,
Sure.
Or put their kid in a private school. You can make life-changing events off that. And I did think it was kind of humorous because the bill said that they were going to be the highest paid agency in the land, and they were for about 3 weeks. And then BCSO shot over them. And then APD's already looking at a significant raise. So the new bill that we saw before us today that's in the legislation, which it's not going to go anywhere, it just says that annually they'll do a market analysis to always make sure that the state police is the highest paid in the land. Well, if you're the highest paid agency in the land, you should also be doing, it doesn't mean you're the highest paid, but do the least amount of work.
Right.
And really, I appreciate our state police. They do a great job, especially in the rural areas of our community, our state, where we have smaller law enforcement agencies, smaller sheriff's offices. They really augment their resources. Here in San Juan County, we're a little bit different. They're more highway patrol because, they're dispatched out of Albuquerque. We handle the major crimes that happen in this area. We even handle those secondary crimes because they're not dispatched. When they call 911, it hits our dispatch center, not their dispatch center. You have to call Albuquerque to get a hold of any of our local state police guys. But my guys are looking at them going, these guys are making $8 more an hour than us. So it just starts a wage war is what it happens. And I'm really hoping we get out of that at some point.
So what's the key in your mind to the recruiting issue? And it's a very complex issue because it's not just a matter of people not wanting to be sheriff's deputies or police officers. Yeah. It's also a matter of we've got a whole population of young men in this country who don't want to work. And there's not been a whole lot of things put out there for them. Right. Look, work creates purpose in your life.
Absolutely.
It's critical for us to have a civil society that there are those components built into it. I think we've done a really good job as a country outsourcing so many of our jobs that should be filled by the young people in this country. And then, of course, the minimum wage and these, standard of living, everybody's got to be able to have one job, and that's going to be able to pay for everything that they need. It's just not reality, not how it should work. But there's a huge gap. How do we get people into the workforce? How do we get them to be?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. When I talked about, the struggles as we hire, we're just like any other employer out there. We saw the difficulty during COVID, the difficulty after police reform. So how does that pendulum sway back? And like I said, it's slowly swaying back, but not fast enough because still right now the media is just plummeting us. And I think the politicians have backed off as much because they've realized, you don't see so many negative bills towards law enforcement right now that are currently going through legislation. Actually, there's a lot of bills that are going to help law enforcement. But they've kind of backed off on it. But the media's realized, hey, these headlines, that's where we're getting an audience from. Yeah. And that's where they're going to drive home. And that is still alive, and it's going to take.
We've seen a couple of those in our local paper.
Absolutely, it's going to, and it's going to take it's going to take time. And I'm not saying that people have short-term memories, but we got to realize that the very people that want to protect you, somebody's got to step up. Who is that going to be? We don't manufacture these guys in the local warehouse. There's a bill going through right now, and it actually passed through the Senate, which will allow non-citizens to be law enforcement officers in the state of New Mexico. All you have to have is a work visa. Currently, our state law says you have to be a U.S. citizen, but they're going to change that you can be on a work visa. You know how difficult it is going to be to try to vet somebody that, their last residence was in Mexico? How do I not know that, there's not somebody that has a criminal mindset that may be coming to us just to learn about law enforcement? Look what happened with the Zetas down in Mexico. They were a Mexican cartel. They were derived out of a special forces unit that we trained. So are we going to bring in non-U.S. citizens that are on work visas and teach them how we do law enforcement, give them access to our databases?
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do something like that. I'm not going to take the risk. But I guess that's what the state answers, that maybe if we make a higher applicant pool. But the reality is, again, they're throwing money at the problem. They're offering more bonuses. They're offering more money to the state police, more money, opening up application pool. But really, I think our country has to get back behind law and order. They have to get back behind a civil society and get back behind our law enforcement. And we're trying to get our honor back. When I first started law enforcement, if you went up on the stand and you said to the jury that this happened, your word was gold. Now, we'll see the video.
Right.
There's a video.
Yep.
Well, I had to jump out of my car because I had to go and deal with the situation, and I turned my video camera afterwards. And granted, they'll go back a certain amount of time, but if he didn't capture something, he's lying. He's lying. If it's not on video, well, at that point, we can stop writing reports and just throw our camera footage up there and just you decide at this point. Everything has every action that we have, because we are questioned at every level now. And I do believe that there should be oversight over law enforcement. Don't get me wrong, I do. I mean, law enforcement is entrusted with some serious authority.
Absolutely.
They have the ability to take somebody's freedom. If rightfully in the right situation and conditions, they have the ability to take someone's life. And you take that life and freedom that you have the ability to do up there. We have to have well-trained, good, sound people, and there has to be oversight. And I really think we do a great job of that here in San Juan County. I do. Do we make mistakes? Yes, we do. We're human. We have to make split-second decisions. We're not robots. And getting society to better understand those things. I use one of your quotes you told me a long time ago. And it's fun. Oh, yeah.
Dangerous.
It's a big one. And I remember one day we were talking about something. We were both frustrated, and it was on a bunch of stuff that was happening on social media. And you said, well, Shane, social media is a modern-day bathroom wall. Yeah. And I'm like, man, you hit the nail on the head. And I get messages constantly off, different social media platforms. Hey, Shane, did you see this? Did you see that? The couch lawyers and the the people that watch way too much CSI, that think if you show me a picture that we have the technology to look at the picture, to look at the person's retina, to find out who the guy is that took the camera. Yeah, that doesn't happen. Or why didn't you guys do this? Well, that technology doesn't even exist. So we have to combat, just entertainment and social media and people's views of those things. And
social media has been a big game changer for law enforcement.
It has been a huge game changer. It's positive.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it is so nice to be able to put something out there and get.
Do you know this person?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It is. But on the other hand of it, it can be a serious detriment and very negative towards us. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Or somebody has a negative law enforcement experience. This happened to me just within the last couple of days. Somebody had a negative law enforcement experience. They post up on social media, hundreds of comments and about this, and it's a misunderstanding. The person reaches out to me a couple of days later. I explained what happened. They're like, oh, that makes sense. I said, but here's the problem. I said, I'm glad you understand that. But instead of giving us first crack at either trying to make it right or look into it, you posted it. And now everybody out there is taking what your narrative is, and they believe that that's the way we operate. And we don't. You just had a misunderstanding on things, and now we've explained it. And this individual says, well, I'm sorry. And I said, well, I understand, I do, but I want you to know of the impact of that. So keep that in mind next time. And she goes, I didn't even think of that. That's okay, but now we have.
It is interesting. I've had a few of those conversations over the years with individuals who I know have my phone number, and they'll post something as opposed to just calling and saying, hey, tell me about this.
Yeah.
Remember when the satire Tribune, the Farmington Tribune was online.
We were just talking about that today.
Oh my goodness. And, and the things that would get posted, people would think it was real.
Yeah.
You know, and then they're commenting on it, and then they're sending them to us, and it's like, no. This is all satire. Not true.
You're absolutely right.
Hickory Apache president called me up one day because there was an article that they were going to sue the city of Farmington because we have a street named Apache Street, and he thought it was a real thing. Wow. And called me up and said, Mayor, we are not suing the city of Farmington. I mean, and I tell folks, because I'll have individuals who be like, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm doing great. Why? Well, because of this thing, and it's all happening on a reality that's all digital and it's online. And if you don't choose to engage in that, that's not your reality.
I tell folks all the time, I don't read the comments. No. So I don't. What usually happens is somebody will forward me something and say, Shane, did you see this? And I say, all right, we'll look into it. Right. But don't read the comments. You won't be able to sleep at night, and you just, it just beats you up. You can't, because it's somebody on a couch that's had a bad day and decides to say something negative and you see that anyway. Like I said, things have changed where people harass people on these sites, and the banter that goes back and forth. Where's the civility? Where's the peace? That's what we want.
It's not on there.
No, it's a cesspool sometimes. And when I started law enforcement, we did. When social media first came about, I was like, what a great idea. Keep in contact, the old high school buddies. And this is a good thing. And old family members, we're just not meeting them, or seeing them at funerals and weddings anymore. Now we got a chance to highlight and show pictures of our kids. And then law enforcement started getting about, hey, this is a great avenue. This is another media outsourced to our community. And now we're having to hire PIOs that are social media experts, and we're having to. And now all of our comments on there, right? Anything is open up to a Freedom of Information Act.
Yep.
When people post stuff on there, you can't delete it, and they can just trash you all they want because they just have negative views towards law enforcement. And watching the banter in between there, we're just trying to provide good information out there, occasionally some humor to keep people involved in it, but we have to kind of monitor the cesspool at the same time, and negative information that comes out. I could literally stick a deputy there all day long just trying to keep up with our social media. Yeah. Just constantly reacting to people that think that social media now is 911. I need somebody over at my house right now. Then call non-emergency dispatch. We do not monitor this all the time. So it has been a help and a hindrance, and it just depends on the day which one that's going to fall under.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, look, moving on. Talk a little bit about things going on with the Sheriff's Office. We got some capital projects that are happening.
We do, yeah.
We got a triage center, of course, that we've been looking at. I'd be interested to kind of get your outlook. What's the new command post about?
Yeah, so we were the recipients of some funding through our congressional legislators. So there was an opportunity to put in for capital items for the Community Project Fund. And through our legislator, Teresa Ledger Fernandez, we put our application in for what we felt would be a good asset for the Sheriff's Office and the community. We were able to tie that to really be multi-jurisdictional, so we put in for a new command post. So the command post that we've had before, you can't miss it. It looks like the bus off of RV that Robin Williams was in, the flat-nosed RV. Yeah. I think it's coming up on 17 years old. She still runs like a champ. The problem is very, very claustrophobic in that thing. You get more than 4 or 5 deputies in there with all their hardware. It's difficult. You cannot operate that as a command post. It works great out on DWI roadblocks, the county fair because it's a smaller vehicle, but really for incident command, we don't have a command post of that size and that need in our community. So we put in for it, and we were fortunate enough to be selected. I think out of the hundreds of applications that were put in, she was only allowed to select 11.
Okay.
And our project was selected, and that was going to be just over $1 million. So we got this beautiful new command post. I hope I'm able to see it while I'm still sheriff because it's got quite a bit of build time, about 18 months. So I'm hoping I'll be able to see it, but it is really a unified command center, although the Sheriff's Office put in for it. Our emergency Office of Emergency Management, the San Juan County Fire Department. If Farmington PD needs it, Farmington Fire, we're rolling that bad boy out. Right. It is huge, amazing technology in it. Camera systems, pole cam, the ability to have a tactical dispatcher in there, the ability for deputies or emergency personnel to bring in their computer systems. a area in there to really plan when we're in unified command, the different phases of an incident. But we'll be able to be comfortable in that, and we'll be able to operate out in the field without having to run it back and forth in the office or having resources split. So very excited about that. Yesterday they got with me and they said, hey, we got to come up with a paint scheme on this. And I'm like, you're creative, Shane. Why don't you do it? So I went to Chief Vega and I said, I got an idea. Sheriff's office across the side, little bitty bumper sticker on the back that says fire. So he wasn't there, but I let his staff know that's already been the agreement. Yeah. So we're trying to figure out a paint scheme between red and green. It's going to look like a Christmas bus going down the road. So we're going to try to find something that's neutral enough that, everybody sees who's involved, whether it be out on a fire. I don't want to say crime scene. Yeah. If it's out on a crime scene, I don't want to say search and rescue. So we're trying to find the right wording for it. So we think something along the lines of, a unified command center, something of that still gives it the authority, but doesn't give the wrong message while we're out there. But
then you can call it the UCC, and that makes it easy.
Everything
comes down to the acronyms. Yeah,
that's what it's all about. But you always got to back up and say, how can people manipulate this? Yeah. So I've been through enough of those. When I first started with the sheriff, when I first started, a couple years into the sheriff's office, we had a motorcycle team. Man, I thought I had the ultimate job. I'm like, I cannot believe they were paying me to ride a dirt bike. This is awesome. And we were the SCAT team. Sheriff's Community Action Team, also known as Bear Crap. So be careful on those things. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I hope you're still here when that gets
I do too. I hope maybe we'll see it. If not, I'll be the sheriff coming out of retirement. Maybe they'll let me hold the little ribbon at the end at the ribbon cutting.
That's it. We have your name on it somewhere.
Of course.
Commissioned under former sheriff.
You've got to have the plaque on it.
Looks like we're going to be doing some expansion of the sheriff's office, a land purchase.
Yeah, so we similar to I've tried to forecast past my administration. I love the fact that there are several things that have happened at the sheriff's office because a sheriff had enough vision past his term to look at where the sheriff's office was heading. And I've always admired those sheriffs that came before me that are able to do that. So I was thinking one day about the issues that we have with our sheriff's office, very similar to the issue the city of Farmington's in. You're out of space with your PD over there. I've watched you all remodel that thing through growth, through planes hitting it, all kinds of stuff. And now you guys have the opportunity to get that great facility, right over there off of Andrea Drive. So as I looked at our facility, I said, we're out of space. Now, we still have some room for growth, but we have just west of us, there's a large piece of private property that's going to be a subdivision. And I was looking out there one day, and of course we got our new helicopter last year, which we're very excited about having that, continuing our aviation program. But I'm watching how they take off, and I'm like, we're going to be buzzing the tops of somebody's house. Yeah. And where the concern is as we come in and as we leave. And so the land developer, about the same time, I'd actually spoken to the previous owners and then spoken to him. He says, hey, would you be interested in buying a section of that land? Now, the county owns about 6 acres on the end of it. Would you be able to buy that strip that runs across there? So it's already been passed through the county commission. We're still working out the agreement with the current landowner. But what our hopes are is, one, we'll have a very safe exit and entry point for our helicopter without hitting somebody's air conditioner. The second part of that, it allows for some growth. I can imagine in my time what we're going to use it for is from additional parking, knock down the fence, put some gravel out there. We do a lot of training, regional training at the sheriff's office, but it also allows an opportunity if we need another building. So if we would need to put in a training building or something of that effect, it's going to allow us a little bit more growth. So I'm very excited about at least being able to cut out a little bit more. So it'll be good for the sheriff's office in the future.
I like that. We also have the training academy.
We do.
Out off of Troy King or
Yep.
Is it Troy King?
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks.
Right up there.
And I know the sheriff and the chiefs and everybody sits on a board.
Correct, yes, sir.
And have we gotten any funny for any improvements out there to that area?
So there is some capital outlay money currently for this year. I think it's priority about number 2 or 3 on that, which is good. I was Academy 2, so out there, I think they're on Academy 57 now, so it's been a little bit. The first academy was so bad out there, they about just said, no, we're not going to do this. Those guys They were hellions. Yeah. Every other day I came in, you're going to Santa Fe, you're staying here, you're going to Santa Fe, you're staying here. And I was fortunate enough to be in the second academy there. So it was at the college at that time before we moved it out there. But yeah, the academy out there, great facility, another great opportunity for somebody who wants to be in law enforcement in San Juan County. You can stay here. You can go home every night.
Right.
You're not going to stay in the dorms in Santa Fe. So that is awesome. But, looking at the expansion of that, the track needs to be replaced. We need some funding for that. It's the vision of the current director out there that what he wants to do is do a building just that's strictly for defensive tactics. So there is a need for some expansion there. They're also looking at BLM being able to annex in a little bit more property to expand our firing range out there. So it's a need of some improvements, but beyond just serving local law enforcement, we also have individuals that are our partners also, like Game and Fish sends people out there,
right.
The Park Service. We've had deputies from Rio Arriba County, McKinley County, our neighboring counties be able to send their law enforcement here. The one thing we don't have, just because of limits and infrastructure, is dorms at this point. And I look forward through the years to seeing that grow. Navajo PD now is a partner, and they've talked about utilizing us. In the past, they were always post-certified out of Arizona, so they're looking at New Mexico certification, the ability to send deputies here. They do have their own academy, utilizing the track for their high-speed or EVOC operations, that's emergency vehicle operations,
okay.
Utilizing our firing range. It goes beyond just state and local. We have the FBI goes out there, and they do their training. We even had our National Guard go out there. But so some expansion there that we can do. So,
yeah.
But there is some funding, and hopefully we get there on that.
I hope so too. I know we've spent some time out there talking with them, and it needs some love.
It does.
Facilities all age.
That's right.
And at some point we have to repair and replace.
Yes, sir.
Future of the Crisis Triage Center. We talked a little bit about this with Commissioner Fortner and County Manager Stark. In regards to law enforcement here in the area, how do you see that playing in to your operations?
I think it's phenomenal. I have got to tip my hat to San Juan County overall when it comes to mental health. We are constantly, as law enforcement, either dealing with somebody that's in a mental crisis or somebody has a mental health issue. And, we got to roll back to about the 1970s when we deinstitutionalized mental health. We shut down state hospitals, we threw them out on the street, and we'll see what happens. Go have private insurance. In reality, what happened is they left law enforcement to deal with those issues. And very soon we found that the biggest institutions in the United States for mental health were prisons. Cook County Jail, Rikers Island, and LA County Jail are the top three biggest mental institutions in the United States. So, as we move forward and we realize that, listen, imprisoning these people, putting them in jail, these aren't mental health facilities. We're just taking these people out of the population as a place to deal with them. And I watched that, again, through my career, where that's what we did. That's what you did. If somebody had a mental health issue and they committed a crime, they went to jail because we had no other place for them.
Sure.
And I watched law enforcement evolve. And the first evolution of that was our CIT teams. And we were doing CIT in San Juan County before CIT was cool, and that's our critical incident teams. And they're dealing with people that are in a mental crisis. And starting getting training in behavioral health, how to deal with these people. One out of every 4 people that are shot by law enforcement have a mental health, are going through mental crisis or have a mental health issue. We don't know how to deal with them. So I watched the CIT program develop here in the county. I was able to be a part of that also. So we're training our officers better. And now it's a state mandate. Good. Now our officers know how to deal with them. All right. Where do we put them?
Yeah.
We're still running into a situation where we don't have the resources. So where do? We take them to the hospital. And we take them to the hospital, and the hospital is not equipped in a way. They do have resources and deal with that, but it's very difficult to clogging up our emergency rooms and not having the.
And that's an expensive visit. Anytime you go to the hospital.
Yeah, and we're with limited capacity in the behavioral health ward. So how are we dealing with these, especially when it comes to our kids that are going through behavioral health crisis, right? We have to fly them to Las Cruces from San Juan County because we have no providers here for our kids. So it's always been a struggle on how do we deal with those that are either in mental crisis and it's temporary or have mental health issues. What are the resources? So I watched it evolve from the CIT programs into what now is what we have as the Navigation Center. And that was a hub of if somebody needed those resources, who could we reach out and what are the resources in our community? Still a good thing, proactive. But law enforcement is still dealing with them after hours, on the weekends, and we still are limited in resources of when we can send those people when they're in immediate need. So then we start moving forward to this next transition to our Crisis Treatment Center. Our Crisis Triage Center, fantastic idea. So as you know, this is going to be a facility to handle people both short-term and I say temporary long-term right here in our community. And it allows a place that's open 24/7 for law enforcement who are encountering these individuals to drop them off at that facility so they can get the specific needs they need.
Yeah.
Maybe it's medication, maybe they just need some time to speak with a licensed professional there. And we can help them and then direct them into the navigation center and get them on the right track. I read a recent statistic. There was a national survey that said 28 out of our 33 counties in New Mexico do not have adequate mental health services.
Yeah.
And so very proud. I hope, it's a $7 million project. I heard that the state may kick in half of that. So kind of waiting. I think that was supposed to happen tomorrow or today. That
Well,
maybe
this airs after that. So this is,
So
we'll see.
I guess I'll
when the
defer
show
to you
airs,
on
we'll
this.
see what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll know by then.
Yeah, so there's
have-
some things that are
we'll have
happening.
Greg put it on the bottom.
That's right.
By
We'll
the
put
way.
flashers. Yeah, big old flags and everything else. No, that would be great
Yeah.
because that's going to help us twofold. Number one, it's great that the state has the investment in this. Huge. Right now, the whole legislative session has been based on two things: mental health and crime.
Yeah.
So I think it's great to really show the support and the initiative up there by funding this great program. Plus, it'll give us another $3.5 million to do improvements on Safety City or other capital projects
be
we
great.
have. So
Yeah.
that would be great if we can do this. So I'm very, very excited about that. Yeah. Hopefully, I get to see that before my days ends this year. So I'm hoping it's going to be a little ways out yet, but
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking earlier. We probably could have went to this prior, but I'm interested in your perspective of crime trends. That's always a question that people ask, and I think because we spend so much time in front of our screens and we're fed all the information that's happening all across the United States, and we can see, well, for example, right now, what we've been dealing with. They're burning Teslas all over the United States, right? I mean, all this vandalism, all this property crime, all this violence. I mean, it's terrifying. I think we're very fortunate. I believe we live in a fantastic county. I think the quality of people here, we have good people. We don't deal with a lot of those things you see on the national level. Now we deal with some.
Oh, we do.
But I'm interested to kind of get your feedback. I mean, what areas right now are really concerning to you as the sheriff in your department?
Well, for the viewers out there, of course, we have all kinds of stats, and we break them down to the lowest level. But I think what the community is more interested in is drugs, violent crime, property crimes, and then traffic at the end of that. So if we take it from the top, violent crime, we want to talk about crimes, person-on-person crimes. Statistically, what I've seen with the sheriff's office is we average about 5 homicides in the community a year, and that, keep in mind, that's outside, not in the municipality areas.
Right.
That's what we average.
Unincorporated.
Yeah, exactly, unincorporated areas. So if you look at those statistics, we're still on that, and we've been on that plane for years. And really, it's about. I look at that five homicides per year, and we average about 116,000 residents in San Juan County. So that's good overall. But then you break that down into battery and assault. Batteries and assaults were up a little bit last year, but not much. But we haven't seen any major gains or many drops. Also crimes against person. We have to talk about sexual assaults. Our sexual assaults are down with adults, but they're up with kids. And that's unfortunate, and I hate that. I mean, if there's one thing that I think society will get together on, it's our children.
Sure.
I don't care what side of the aisle you are, what your views are, we protect our kids. And sadly to say that we are seeing more investigations on sexual assaults in kids.
And you run the sexual assault units
That is correct.
here which covers even the cities inside of the
So we have our SORNA program. So our SORNA program, one of the responsibilities of the sheriff's office is to register all of our sex offenders. So anybody that's sentenced, did their time, and come back out and are required to register, we have to do that. That's one of our state mandates. We have about 240 sex offenders in San Juan County. Now, whether they reside in San Juan County or work in San Juan County, so they could live in Durango but work here, they're still required to register.
Okay.
So we run that program. The other program we have is ICAC. That's our Internet Crimes Against Children. And that's something that last year we had an increase in that. It was because we started really pushing that initiative. And that's our kids that are targeted on social media devices, the internet, and that. And those guys do great work. They really do. So sadly to say, we've seen an uptick in that. I was always concerned during COVID when these kids were at home.
Yeah.
And a lot of times their biggest advocates was the school. It was the teacher.
That's right.
And I said, you know what, when we come out of this, we're going to see an increase of CSP, criminal sexual penetration of minors, criminal sexual contact of minors. So we're going to see an increase of this. And some of these cases, keep in mind, they may not be fresh. They may be a kid that's disclosing from years, abuse in the past, could be years, months, what have you. But I am seeing this uptick. So I want to say that some of that trend right now is coming still out of that, where kids are finally feeling like they're in a safe enough place to disclose. So we are seeing that. So that happens with the crimes against persons. When it comes to property crimes have actually gone down for us last year. So very, very happy about that. That's always concerning. Drugs are still an issue in San Juan County. And, some of the shifts I've seen since my days in narcotics, it was primarily methamphetamine. Now we're seeing the horrible epidemic of fentanyl. We saw when fentanyl started to really rear its head in San Juan County, we started to see a lot of overdoses. Yeah. And to the point that we're administering or issuing all of our guys Narcan. So they've got one for their own personal use if they happen to be exposed, and we got another one for the patient. And we saw a huge influx of that in the beginning. We saw a lot of overdoses that resulted in death. We saw a lot of Narcan use. I was giving out life-saving medal awards like right and left. If you didn't have a life-saving medal award and you were at the sheriff's office, it was like a primary pin. I finally got to the point, I was like, they're kind of coming to a mute point at this. But what happened as a result of that is they started issuing or making Narcan more readily available to people. So we don't know what our overdose or our actual overdose rates are because they're not going to the hospital. They're not calling emergency services on those. So we really don't know where we're at. So we look to a lot to our narcotics division and their investigations to find out what is the flow of fentanyl and methamphetamine in our community, which are our two primary drugs. I'm happy to report, as of our last meeting, they said we're having trouble finding fentanyl.
That's good.
Yeah, and there's a direct result because of what's happening on the border right now.
I was just going to say.
Let me tell you,
it's amazing. Is it a coincidence?
We were all shocked. No, we were very happy and very pleased to find out that the activity that's happened on the border and really securing our border is having an impact on San Juan County. Very happy to see that. I mean, we talk about border issues. When it comes to drugs, it affects every inch of this country. Yes. And specifically in San Juan County, our border issues are drugs. So having it difficult to find fentanyl, finding out that the price is dropping in fentanyl, that they're trying to figure out how to get powdered fentanyl here to press their pills here because they can't get them across the border. We're making some positive change very quickly in the drug epidemic in this country. So I was very happy to hear about that, but it's still an issue. Methamphetamine is still king in San Juan County, and it's unfortunate. But I hope with some of the national policies putting more, where does our fentanyl come? One of the primary precursors of fentanyl, right, is the amphetamine that goes into it. And that comes from China. That's what's fueling all of these super labs down in Mexico and putting more pressure on China, saying, "Hey, knock it off." So I'm hoping to see some positivity coming from across the pond on that we're going to be the benefits of.
That's good news.
And so that's good. But drugs are still an issue in San Juan County, and that will always be an issue as long as there is a supply. We've got to cut off the supply of that.
And then alcohol.
Alcohol, we got to remember that. In New Mexico, we have a high rate of alcoholism. Here in San Juan County, high rate of alcoholism. Yeah. So that's still going to remain a problem. And then on the traffic end of it, we saw that our traffic stats as far as accidents were up 10% last year. However, at Farmington, I've seen a lot of FPD's posts. They're still having the traffic issues. There's a reason for that. I feel, and this is my opinion on that, is during COVID, we told the cops, just respond to emergency calls. That's it. Don't get out of your car. We don't want you to get sick, and we don't want to stop some car that's coming through our area from Texas, and they give you COVID, and you introduce it to our community. Just go to the hot calls. Well, simultaneously, we had guys leaving because of police reform and everything else. So we've got this pocket, a very large pocket of what we call COVID cops right now. So we're trying to teach them to be proactive again, to stop those cars, to get out there. Sadly, last year, New Mexico really lowered the penalty assessment. What was once a ticket that would cost you $80 now is $20. So they did away with all the court fees. So in the mind of the driver, it may be worth it. Now, you still lose the points off your license, just the impact to your wallet's not going to be as great. So we have made a major push within our patrol division to run more traffic. And really, amazing things happen when you run traffic. You get the DWIs, you get the drug stops, you may find a domestic violence victim, you find the people with the warrants that we're looking for. So it's not, obviously the primary goal here is traffic enforcement, but you can get into a lot of other stuff and teaching them that once again. So we've pushed a huge initiative in that. Our DWIs were up a little bit more last year. They wrote, I think it was 1,000 more tickets than they did before. And I do want to say for all the viewers out there, we're not revenue people for the state. We're not.
Nope.
Traffic is about compliance, and that's it. You know, if we stop somebody, and I'm not saying you have a good enough excuse, but it's the decision of that and the discretion of that deputy to say, okay, a warrant is, or excuse me, not a warrant, a warning is valid at this point. Then great. But if you're a slow learner and have multiple tickets, you're going to get another one.
Right.
But citizens are frustrated with this. They absolutely are. Speeding being the biggest one of those. And we're cracking down just the way Farmington is. So if you got a heavy foot, it's coming. So be careful of that. So big initiative.
Well, we saw that big uptick in the city last year of deaths, from speeding and distracted driving. I mean, that's the other component of it too. People need to stay off their phones. I'm seeing it all the time.
Oh, too much. I see it every day.
But yeah, individuals running red lights. People doing 50 down Main Street.
Yeah.
Doing 75 through the county.
Yeah.
People are getting hurt. And it just frankly comes down to individuals making a conscientious choice that they're going to be responsible.
That's right.
They're going to abide by the law. Yeah. There's a reason why that's a posted speed limit.
Yeah.
It's
just listen. We want
everybody to get home.
Don't be in a hurry to
every
die.
night. Safely.
We got plenty to do. Don't be in a hurry to die.
That's right.
That's
life is hard enough.
It is.
There's no need for that.
Yeah.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We cover lots of ground.
We're going to have you back on the radio show, too.
We can make this a weekly thing.
We could. The mayor and the sheriff's
I forgot about the
podcast.
cameras and the mic. We can just chew the fat.
Right. Over your years, 27 years.
27, yes, sir.
Man, we're only 30. I don't
I
understand
know.
how this is
How does it add up?
What do you think has been some of your biggest successes as a sheriff, or is it really just in your career? When it comes to serving this community?
Nate, that is tough. That is an extremely tough question because you're talking about 27 years. I have had so many great opportunities, both personally and as sheriff. I mean, what it's done for my life, like I said, outside of my marriage and my family, the sheriff's office has been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Being able to serve my community, being to be in situations that nobody has ever been in, having great opportunities. I was able to go to the FBI National Academy, the different positions I've held, the people I've been able to serve with, the ability to help people that thought that there was no way that crime was going to be solved or they could get the help they need. Those have been just constant blessings. As sheriff, I had a lot of ideas and goals when I became sheriff, and I very quickly had a wrench thrown in that. Almost immediately we ran into COVID. I became sheriff in 2019, then boom, we get hit with COVID. We get hit with police reform. I see a reduction in manpower. And these grand ideas I had, I wanted to get our special enforcement team up and run, our street crimes unit. I'm just struggling right now to keep my patrol division functioning at a point where it's not full, but at least it's safe for the officer and we have decent response time. So I had a lot of wrenches thrown in there, and we were able to accomplish some great capital item things, what we could do. But I told the guys, I said, listen, if we're not able to move forward with projects that we want to do or additional divisions and things, I had to stop and reassess, and we have to do that as leaders quite a bit. We got to back up. We have a vision of where we want to go, but sometimes the good Lord loves to mess up a good plan.
Well, I explained this to my kid the other day. One of the most frustrating things in life is that there are forces out there that you have no control over.
Absolutely.
That work against you at times.
They do.
And there's just simply nothing you can do about that. You can only control what you can control.
That's right. So you back up, you reassess. So, and right now, I told our guys what we have to be is really good at the basics right now.
Yeah.
Really good at the basics. You know, getting these younger cops up to the level of performance and proactivity they can be at. You know, we've done some great things as far as recruitment and retention. I think has helped stabilize us at this point as we start looking at growth. But I think a lot of the things that I was able to accomplish there right now, like the land and stuff, some of the things, it's sad to say that some of those won't come to fruition until I'm gone.
Yeah.
But, you know, I go back on leadership quotes and stuff you hear is, you know, leadership is about what happens when you're not there. So I think a lot of the things I've been put into play, the sheriff's office is going to be in a really good spot. Every sheriff comes about in their own time. And I was, by the graces of God, put in the position I am because I was needed at this time to get us through the things that we dealt with in my tenure. The next sheriff will have new challenges. And again, what I thought in a perfect world of what I wanted, you know, I had to deal with some major issues during that time. And, you know, I lost my father at that time. And I wasn't planning on that. A lot of things, you know, happened to me personally and professionally. But I'm very proud of the people at the sheriff's office. The core of the sheriff's office and our culture still remains, and I'm very proud of that. And so moving forward, I hope I'm able to see some accomplishments take place. We've done where we lacked manpower. We've done a lot with technology. Oh my gosh, we've got so much technology. My deputies didn't have, you know, they all got phones now, and of course they have the body cams now. And we got a great new system that we just implemented here a couple months ago called Peregrine. Absolutely amazing. It is like having a crime analyst in your pocket. This thing blow your socks off.
Like a little AI unit or what?
Buddy, I am telling you, you know, back when I was a young detective, I mean, everything that you wanted on a case, you were data mining, you know, looking through old reports and looking through other local agencies' reports, and that's all you had. And then we got to the point that we had guys that could do that for us, crime analysts, and they could help us with statistics and, you know, where accidents were happening and all these things. Still, they're having to go through all of these calls. They're putting charts together for us, and everything, taking them weeks to do. And but boy, we thought it was great. We have a crime analyst. You know, we hit big time. And now this new system, Peregrine's coming out, and oh my gosh, it's an AI form of technology. It is amazing. It is like what you see in the movies where the secret agent calls his special friend, and the guy, you know, is behind the computer and has got the mic on. He says, "Oh yeah, that guy had an address and this and this and this," and we think, "Oh great, you know, you have to be CIA to get that." Well, this new software program that we have, what it's able to do for data collection, anybody that's tied in, I really hope this becomes a state initiative that everybody has Peregrine, because we can look up somebody's name. This thing will scan documents for that guy's name. It'll pick up, you know, if we've ever scanned a tow slip in. If another agency, like Albuquerque PD is involved in it, we can pull their body cams from here. We can pull their reports. Before, we would have to find out if that guy was ever booked there by going through the court system, going through and find out, okay, he was booked on this or whatever. Maybe he wasn't.
This is a game changer.
I am telling you.
This is the kind of thing we talk about, AI. There's good and bad, right? There's good and bad in everything, but man.
It is.
Its ability to pull info, it's mind-boggling.
Oh, and that's not, you can run a plate. You can take a plate number and put it in there. And any of the agencies they're hooked in with their camera systems and hooked into Peregrine, it'll pop up that. Now we have the ability to do that also, but we can have access to the like I said, the body cam footage, photos, whatever it is, almost instantaneously. It is absolutely amazing. I was sitting in the class next to the guy, and he goes, "Watch this," and he was showing me these things. It was unreal. It'll even do things that have to do with if you have an officer that's going through maybe a crisis, you know, mental health with law enforcement. It'll pull up how many violent calls he's been involved in, like that. What it'll do for just management portions of it we have, but what it does for crime investigation, we're not even skimming the surface on this thing real quick. And I walked out of there and I said, if I would have had that as a detective, I told our detectives, you are so fortunate we had to do it old school. I mean, we're gumshoe detectives, but it is so impressive what this system's going to be, and that thing needs to grow. It is an incredible piece of technology. You know, along with that technology where I didn't have the manpower to do the things, we've got our LPRs, our license plate readers, up on our main arteries of the county.
Yeah.
And really, we got to tip our hat to Farmington for that with their real-time crime center that they got right now.
Came up in a conversation with a guy today.
And I'm telling you, and I'm not going to lie. I'm going to put it on the table right now. When I heard FPD was first talking about this real-time crime center, I was like, we ain't big enough for that. And I've been to New York's real-time crime center. You go in there, and I can't even
imagine.
It is massive, and you see the little ticker tape thing going across, stabbing in Central Park, and man, they're monitoring cameras. And I said, in the city of Farmington's going to get with this? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. That's ridiculous.
Thanks for the faith, Sheriff.
What's the chief thinking? And I'm like, yeah, right. And then all of a sudden, great vision, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm like, can you see if Farmington's got maybe some footage on that from this? And then, and I was like, man, this thing's awesome, because we get guys coming from the county. They're coming into the city, and we're picking up that.
Yeah.
And, of course, the chief says, hey, listen, the one thing that we have here in San Juan County is great partnerships. We are a gem up here.
We are.
Albuquerque and BCSO don't even talk to each other.
Really?
But we talk to each other. We know what's going on. Our deputies and officers know what's going on. And now I really think his vision of that center, it's going to become another joint operation, just like our dispatch center, just like our academy. Now we've got LPRs. Aztec's got LPRs. Bloomfield's got LPRs. And at some point, the chief's going to say, okay, that's great, but I'm going to need some help manning this thing. And we're already having that conversation. And where does that plug into our network that we have here between law enforcement and dispatch, and now this real-time crime center, and the ability to know who's coming into our community or exiting our community. If it's a kidnapping. If I would have had a system like that during Sasha Krause, that could have been a game changer for us.
What a great example.
It's a great. I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
That case, it was a needle in the haystack case. Thank goodness we were able to solve that through good investigative work.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, could we have and the guys did a great job. They really did. But if we would have had that, we could have got that much closer, that much faster. I don't know if it would have had a different outcome, but we could at least taken that worry from our community there was a predator amongst us. And so we've done a ton with technology. So I said, lack of manpower and being able to really put the right assets in the areas that I wanted. We just started working, with technology, working with capital outlay stuff. And of course, partnerships. Those are always important. And I really think during my time, I've strengthened a lot of partnerships that we have with the Sheriff's Office, both on a local level, a state level, and a national level. So very proud of that. So we're in good shape. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And the deputy's doing a fantastic job. I'm very proud of him.
No, I am too. And I would tell anybody in our law enforcement agencies up here, thank you. I mean, I really believe that we have some quality individuals out there who are truly here to serve, and protect, and they're out there trying to do the right things. And you said it earlier, we don't do everything right all the time.
No.
But it's a hard job, and it requires a lot of rigor. And man, I just encourage those guys, make sure you're getting your rest, make sure you're drinking lots of water, make sure you're taking care of your body.
Take care of your family.
Take care of your mind.
That's right.
Do the things you got to do to make sure you can show up every single day and be the superheroes that we need you guys to be sometimes. Not every day is exciting, but a lot of people, most people would not want to do that job, and that's unfortunate. We want them.
Yeah.
We want these people coming out of the military. We want them to want to get into law enforcement. We want folks who are really passionate about their communities and protecting it to be involved. So,
well, I'll put a warning with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of citizens forget that we have a ride-along program. We do. I believe Farmington does.
Yes, we do.
All of our agencies do. If you're curious about law enforcement, go on a ride-along.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, you're going to get bit by the bug. You're going to be like, man, I can't believe all the equipment that's in here, and what this officer or deputy is doing, and what they respond to, and hearing the radio chatter. There's something that if you're a servient person and you wonder if that's got in you, you'll feel it. And you're like, I want some more of this. I want to be behind this. Where's he going? What's he doing? And it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It is. And people will go, wow, man, I'd love to be in that guy's
brought up a
boots.
good point. I need to do
go
a
on a
ride-along.
ride-along.
Yeah,
go on a ride-along. It's phenomenal. It's a lot of
I did
fun.
one in Albuquerque when I was going through college. That was great.
I can imagine that was a
wild.
whole different experience.
It was interesting to see now. Then everything was handwritten.
Yeah.
And now it's growing, and I hope AI comes in and helps us in report taking as well, because
there's already systems out there doing that right now.
Such time saving in everything that you guys are doing out there on the streets.
Boy, it makes me even more sad to know that, I'll be exiting law enforcement at the point that you just get your reports generated and you don't have to write them and you're not sitting in your car pecking away. Boy, man, you can just go out there and do your job and self-report.
Well, Sheriff, awesome. We didn't talk about things going on at the state yet, but I know you're certainly a pro Second Amendment guy.
Yes, sir.
We've seen those things going.
Yeah.
Hopefully SB 279 gets killed and we don't have to worry about that.
I don't think it's going to move, but I say this. We as not only myself, I'm no longer president of New Mexico Sheriff Association. I went off the board. I was fortunate to serve there for 5 years. But, with our members that are on there, I know a lot of people haven't heard it. A lot of people says, where's the sheriffs in this? We haven't been as much vocal on probably social media and in the news, but we are definitely contacting our legislators. And we've been watching this, and we've learned some lessons over the past about how to deal with this administration. And sometimes they throw up something so we get fighting over here while they do this over here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, we got a couple days left in the session, but I'm not watching it move. But on the other hand, I am concerned about a special session. So, everybody keep your radar up on those type of things. But we've seen some good coming out of this session. We really have. We fought off some bad stuff. We did. We've seen some good stuff that is going to help law enforcement. But when you look at almost 1,200 bills that have gone through, and as of Monday, only 20 hit the desk, when it comes down to numbers, it's not going to look like we did a lot there in this session, but there are some good bills that went through. They're going to help law enforcement. And one I'll just highlight real quick is for law enforcement to have the ability to do blood testing when it comes to DWI blood draws.
Oh, really?
On misdemeanors.
Okay.
So currently the way it stands is when we read somebody implied consent, it says that we can require blood, breath, or both. But if somebody had a misdemeanor, we couldn't get blood. They could just refuse the test and get an aggravated DWI. But
how does that work with marijuana use?
Oh, gosh, that's a whole different monster. So the legalization of marijuana has really thrown this wrench in how we deal with driving while impaired, okay? So we're doing a ton of training right now with our A-RIDE program, with our drug recognitions experts that are out there, but we don't have a way to test them other than blood draw. So this is going to help out in that. But we also have to recognize that testing a blood draw for marijuana is more expensive. Yeah, it stays in your blood for a long time. So the difficulty is the level of impairment at the time of driving.
Yeah.
With DWI and the deprivation periods and things we have, we can say when somebody was drunk and what their percentage of alcohol they had in their system. But with marijuana, how do we say that it was psychoactive at the time of driving and it wasn't somebody that did it three days ago, 3 weeks ago? So it's going to be different. And of course, that comes down to good training on the law enforcement officer. What did he observe in the driving? What did he observe on the officer? All of our senses that we had there, and then through the field sobriety tests in that. But the difficult part right now is educating the juries, because we have conditioned them to 0.08, right? 0.08, that's where it's at. So what's the level in their mind for marijuana?
Sure.
When they hear those jury instructions, that's the hurdle that we're trying to change, that needs to be, more people need to be educated on that. Juries need to be more educated on that, because that I tell you, that is a problem in New Mexico right now that's very, very being overlooked right now.
Are there any states doing anything different right now?
I've seen everything from studies on saliva tests to blood tests to different things. If anybody comes out with a way of testing to see if somebody's psychoactive on marijuana at the time of driving, that person's going to be a billionaire. Because, I think we're up to 29, 30 states right now that have legalized recreational marijuana. It is a thorn in every law enforcement agency's butt.
Yeah. And
how do we get to that point? When does that technology become available? But I think a lot of impaired drivers due to marijuana are being overlooked right now by deputies, officers, all alike. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's going to be a positive change that we have coming, that we're going to be able to do that. I think that's really going to help our DWI convictions out there.
All right, This is the last question I have.
You can ask all you want, Mr. Mayor.
Hot topics right now.
Hot topics?
Illegal aliens.
Oh boy,
dealing with those. I know you had a meeting.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, you had a meeting here not too long ago with Tom Holman was there.
Yeah, Tom Holman was there.
I think it's good for people to understand that we're engaged at that level here locally. And
yeah, absolutely. And I want to back up just a hair. So when we changed presidency and President Trump came in, there was an initiative right now to clamp down on the border and illegal immigration in this country. Now, when we look at our border, we have to remember there's 3 issues happening there. We have a humanitarian issue there. We have a drug issue happening there, and we have a national security issue. And really, for the last 4 years, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, you have to recognize we've had a problem down there. And we have.
Yeah.
And it has continued to be a problem. And I always thought it was very odd that we hear from Arizona, we hear from Texas and California about immigration issues, but nothing out of New Mexico. And so I had the opportunity after President Trump took office. I have a friend of mine that, we've been in the game long enough that he's risen through the ranks in HSI. And I get this email that says, you got to get the sheriff's office together, and I got to talk to all the sheriffs or I'm going to get fired. Because Trump, when he says, we're going to get this handled. And he wants to get the right messaging out, because the messaging was that every person that was illegally in the country right now, that vans were going to pull up and they're going to start throwing people in buses and just taking them out without new due process. That's not true. He says, I got to get the sheriffs together and get the right messaging across. We saw the wrong messaging here in San Juan County. The Navajo president stood up and said that ICE was on the reservation and they were contacting Native Americans. So we heard it from the Utes. I think it was the Southern Utes about that. And obviously these people are in my community.
Yeah.
So I called HSI and I said, "Do you guys have any ICE agents?" "No, we don't." And I called Navajo BD commander. He goes, "No, not happening out here." So a lot of bad information. So I was able to go down and sit with ICE. And they said, "Listen, our priority is criminals right now and terrorists that have gotten into our country." And yes, later on down the road, those that have already had an immigration hearing and were found not to meet the criteria of staying in this country, whether it's for political reasons or what have you, that need to self-deport. If they don't, then they will have to be deported. They've had their due process, period. I said, okay, we understand that. So we're not, because I'm not going to be raiding people's buildings and stuff like that. We don't do immigration at a state level, but we want to be good partners. Where they come in is when I have somebody that's illegally in our community selling drugs, because that's
right.
where they bring the drugs in. We deal with cartel in San Juan County.
Sure.
Our state courts are not sufficient enough for the crime. They're not. These guys get a slap on the wrist, and they just return to their criminal ways time and time again. I utilize our federal partners, because I've listened to jail phone calls when they think they're going to get state charges, they're laughing. When they call their mom and say that now it's been adopted federally, they're bawling.
Yeah.
And we use that hammer every chance we get. We work with all of our federal partners. I don't want to sever that. So they pretty much said what our initiative is. There are programs out there where you can partner with them. Some of the concern is also that people that are illegally here, that when they get picked up on civil detainers, and these are just civil detainers that are signed by the agent, not signed by a judge. These aren't criminal detainers. They can absolutely take it criminal, but they handle it on the civil side. But they're detaining people for these civil orders. And some of the bills that are going through the House right now are nobody who receives states funding can participate in this. What I don't want these bills to go to the point that we cannot work with HSI, Homeland Security.
Right.
We can't work with immigration. We can't
We
work
don't want
with
that.
ICE. We absolutely don't want that. We want to be able to use that federal hammer to get criminals out of our community. Yep. Listen, our courts aren't going to do it, then fine, deport them. The bottom goal is to get them out of our community, whether it's in jail or back to wherever they came from. So I had the opportunity last week. I went to the Western State Sheriff's Association, and Tom Holman was one of our guests on there. He had to come via Zoom because he's an extremely busy man right now. And I had the opportunity to tell him about some of the bills in New Mexico, and he was unaware of those, and asked for me to send those to him so they can monitor them with Bondi, which I was impressed about, because some of the other disturbing information that I received during our HSI meeting on there, that 1 out of every 3 known getaways come through New Mexico. 1 out of every 3. We don't know if this person's a terrorist, a criminal. Keep in mind, we came from an era where all you had to do was walk to the port of entry and said, I want to come in, they let you in. Why are they skirting around? There has to be a reason. Are these criminals? Are these terrorists? Why are they circumventing the process that really they just gave you a cell phone and said, we'll give you a text and let you know when your immigration hearing was? There's serious concern for that. And we as law enforcement have a concern about the next 9/11. Are they here now? Who did we let into our country? So there absolutely needs to be an initiative on that. So locking off our border right now, like I said, we've seen direct results for that right here in our community. People often ask me, do we have a huge population of people that are legally here in San Juan County? No, we don't. There are people here that are illegally in the United States. Yes, they are here, but there is not mass numbers. Keep in mind, these folks are coming across that for a reason. It's because they want a job. Right, so they're going to go to agricultural places. They're going to go places with bigger cities, and restaurants, and stuff like that. San Juan County, just doesn't have those resources they need. They may be up here because they have family up here, and they have that resource. But other than that, we don't have a mass population of people. What I'm more concerned about is the criminals that are here dealing drugs in our community, the criminals that are here that cause violent crime. That I don't know where they came from. A lot of our people that are here illegally are from Mexico. We're not seeing the influx like you do in other areas of Venezuelans, Guatemala, different areas like that. We don't see that. Now, what we did encounter was a lot of Chinese at one time.
Yeah, we sure did.
A lot of Chinese. I had 1,100 Chinese people here in San Juan County, and kind of funny how that conversation went. Chief Francisco with Bloomfield was a Navajo police chief, and he calls me and says, Shane, we got this problem out on the reservation. We got a guy that's growing marijuana or growing hemp, but we think it's marijuana. And I said, okay. And so what is his name? He says his name is Dene Benally. He's been federally indicted. I'm happy to point out. And I said, Dene Benally, I said, is he native? And I said, yeah, well, he's your problem, not mine. You're on the reservation. So I said, but let me get you in contact with ICE, or not with ICE, with a DEA. So we had that conversation, and about a day later he calls me. I goes, hey, Shane. He goes, hey, there's a lot of Chinese people out here working. He goes, that'd be your problem. And I said, yeah, you're right. So at that time, we had a local ICE agent, and I sent him out there, and he comes back, and I said, 5, 6 people you contacted? He goes, no, there are hundreds of people out there right now working in these fields and these grows. And I said, wow, what all happened, And very quickly we found out that almost all of the people were on some type of asylum visa. So we had to get diplomatic security involved into it. A lot of these people were duped out of California during COVID when the restaurants closed down to come work this legal industry here in New Mexico. It turned into a human trafficking issue, turned into a humanitarian issue.
I remember calling you.
Oh, my God.
After I got contacted.
Yeah.
And told a story that I thought was like, there's no way this is a true story, and called you, and you go, oh, no, it's worse than that.
I didn't know how bad it was. So I hadn't went out there yet. And so one day I'm sitting around, and I'm getting all these reports, and we're kind of putting this together. And I said, okay, I got to see this for myself. So I told our helicopter pilot, hey, fire up the bird. I want you to take me over there. So we're up in the air, and we barely crest hogback, and from the air I can smell the marijuana up in the helicopter.
Oh, wow.
And I look down, and there are grows and indoor grows, and I went, oh my gosh. So we went back to the office, and so I called Region 2, and I said, hey, get a hold of DEA. We need to expedite this thing. And they called me. I think it was on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and they said, well, they're going to be up here Friday, doing a flight thing, and they'll come by. So Friday, I happened to have that day off, and I get a phone call from the FBI. They said, where are you at? And I said, well, I'm where you need me, buddy. I'm 24/7. He says, the DEA is landing in Farmington Airport right now. We need to meet for lunch. And they went in there, and they said, we cannot believe what we just saw. And, great relationships. We had federal, state, local, tribal. We all came together, and we shut that operation down in 3 days. At the time, it was the largest illegal marijuana grow in U.S. history.
Wow.
California just beat us out with one, but we had 250,000 plants and 60,000 pounds of processed marijuana out there. It was a multi-billion-dollar operation. And then they moved out of our area and went to Torrance County, but the same individuals ended up popping up with a smaller one here.
They went to Oklahoma too, I thought.
Went to Oklahoma. Shortly thereafter, when we chased them out of the area, we were getting calls from Oklahoma Investigative Unit, like, can you identify these people for us? But luckily, there's federal indictments right now. But they even started a smaller grow here, 20,000 plants, small grow, here, and state took down that operation, and state police took down that operation. So glad to have them out of our community. But again, we have a nexus there, and we want to be good partners because ICE and HSI, they were all involved in that. We have to have these partnerships. San Juan County or the Navajo Nation did not have the resources to take care of that. The 20,000 pound grow that they took down in water flow, that the state took down, that cost them $108,000 to take that grow down. That was 250,000 plants and 60,000 tons of processed marijuana.
Wow.
So some of the viewers are probably asking, well, what'd you do with all of it? We destroyed it. So, yeah, every bit of it.
My goodness, that's a good story.
Yeah, but we do have to have
great example of the way we're all working together.
We have to have those. Border security does affect San Juan County. Like I said, we need to be a player in the game. We are a border state. I know my border sheriffs. When I was president of New Mexico Sheriff's Association, I started a subcommittee of the New Mexico Border Sheriffs. And those guys have a fight on their hands down there. Doña Ana, although they deny it all the time as far as border issues, their morgue there is filled with hundreds of John Does and Jane Does that they found out in the desert. This is a humanitarian issue also. Finding children that were brought across the border posing as family members. How do we get these kids back to their families? It's an issue, and we need to be in the fight.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate your leadership on that. And
absolutely.
It's good information for our folks to know. Years ago, the conversation was, well, we hear that there's a hotel in Farmington that's now being used to house illegal immigrants. And same thing you said. They're not going to be here. We don't have the resources. This is not where they're going to drop them off. This is, so it's just rumors. But there's always rumors, and it's always good to dispel those rumors. So I appreciate that.
No problem. And, I didn't tap into it, but I don't want somebody to think it's not a matter that's very serious to us, the human trafficking aspect of it.
Hugely serious.
And that's the difficult one. Finding dope and trailing dope and money is one thing, but, man, human trafficking, boy, that's the evil of mankind. Amen. It is. But so we're on it.
Yeah.
We are.
Well, Sheriff, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nate.
Anything you want to leave the viewers, listeners with?
Oh, I just want to give them a couple messages. One is thank you. Thank you for your support, not only for the San Juan County Sheriff's Office, but all of our first responders in San Juan County. We truly feel the love. As we were going through police reform and all the negativity, we never felt that in San Juan County. We feel highly respected and know that you feel that we are here to serve you, and just very appreciative for that. The second thing I just want to highlight is some things that we talked about here earlier, and that's recruiting. If you are interested in becoming a member of law enforcement, whether it's with the Sheriff's Office or Farmington PD, Aztec PD, Bloomfield, we need you. San Juan County is lacking officers. I'll tell you right now, I'm 17 down right now, and that's a serious impact to our patrol division, our investigative division. So if you have an interest, if any of our conversation has sparked an interest in you, take the opportunity. Come out and ride along with us. Call our office, 505-334-6107. Ask to talk to recruiting. We'd love the opportunity to sit down, talk to you, and tell you about law enforcement and a possible career. So we welcome you. Our sheriff's office is our community sheriff's office, just like our PD is. It's just us serving our friends and family. So we welcome you. Thank you.
Well, Sheriff, thank you. That's a great message. And appreciate you again coming on, and we'll try and get you on again before time is up. And
thank you.
Move
I
on
appreciate
to the other things that you've got going on in life, which we know are great things also. So
we'll see what the Lord, where the Lord sticks me, but I'll be there.
You'll be in the right place when He
needs
you there. So.
I will. Thank you.
Well, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode, which was a fantastic episode, by the way. We hope you found it very insightful, and again, encourage you to please like and share this with your friends, your family, your network. Getting updates from local law enforcement agencies, I think, is really critical to continuing that transparency that we want between local government and the constituents that we serve. So we hope you enjoyed the show today. We'll see you here next time on the Mayor's Table.